Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Earth to Taylor with me, your host, Taylor. Today, we're going to kind of take a 90-degree turn, I want to say, in my podcast, just because there's been so many things that I have researched over the last, I want to say, 5 to 6 years that every time I'm about to make a new episode, I realize in the ways that these things relate to something I'm going to call unveiling Gnosticism. So today we're going to talk about something called Gnosticism and how can I say this relates to my previous episode about your biofield or to racism or DNA and epigenetics or another episode I was going to make. This next one was going to be about like aliens, but I found again how it relates to Gnosticism. And you guys, when I say that the world is getting crazier and crazier and crazier every day, as I'm checking in and seeing what the fuck is happening, whether it's about the government, we are rapidly descending into full fledged, silent coup fascism taking over, and it's going to take years to get back from it. We are there. It's not just like it's gonna happen, where it's already happening. We have mayors being arrested, we have journalists being threatened to be arrested. I just am to a point to where I'm done fucking around. I want to talk about what I feel is important. And I feel like there's so many things happening globally that just fucking relate. And there's no more denying it for me. And as I've been researching Gnosticism probably the last 2 years, I read Mary Magdalene's Gospel. I read, I'm even going back through and rereading the Bible, but with a complete different sense, because I just want y'all to know that everything is so much more deeper than we realize, right? All these other episodes that I've done will relate, and I'm gonna start off slow and just kind of give y'all the tip of the iceberg of how all of these fucking things are gonna weave back into each other throughout the next few seasons, because all of these seasons are going to relate. Once I explain the basics to you, we'll even get into like quantum physics at one point, right? And I'm going to explain it to you how I've been able to learn it myself as a 28-year-old woman that's only taken fucking almost 40 hours credited of college classes, okay? How my brain has been able to receive this information, talk to you about, meditations I've had, crazy things that have happened that have been just inexplicable, how I have known something before it was going to happen, was asked to do something in a meditation or look into something, or, so many crazy things that I find when I do the research back through them, how much they interrelate, and it's like something else is out there communicating. Okay. I don't care anymore. There's no way to deny what I know it's real. A quote that I keep telling people that I just have thought about myself is that it's like somebody trying to deny the wind. You can say you don't believe in the wind because you don't see it, right? But it doesn't mean you're not going to feel the effects of it. And Gnosticism has everything to do with our day to day lives, whether we think about it or know about it or not. And it relates to even just the basis of a spiritual belief, but mixed in with quantumly how it makes sense with science, right? How it makes sense with certain religions, but also the esoteric teachings of so many other religions, how it relates specifically to Gnosticism. And it makes so much sense when you see it through a lens of, if you guys have ever seen The Matrix, okay, the movie The Matrix, this is not a conspiracy. There is real science behind coming down that every single thing on planet Earth is made up of a number, of a coding sequence. We are all made up of frequencies. We are like, nodules in a fucking deep simulated game, right? And it's being proven every day. We have fucking people making teleportation devices at Oxford. You know what I'm saying? We're looking into dark matter. We already know black holes are real. Scientists are seeing the fucking God particle go through and disappear and popping back up, traveling through dimensions. The Willow chip from Google, computing from dimensions. We are not nearing this is just about politics. No, no, no. This is a fucking spiritual battle for our consciousness, okay? And it's bigger than just a specific religion, okay? And it encompasses everybody, me, you, your children, your grandparents. I don't give a fuck what you believe, because when I found a way, the way my brain has worked since childhood is pattern recognition, even in my own self, even to my own detriment. When I make fucked up decisions, I knew I'm making fucked up decisions. It is to my detriment of how much my brain can recognize patterns, whether in my own family and my own self and other people. I can meet someone and just body language alone, talking to them 20 minutes, they're going to be telling me their life story without me even needing to ask, because they sense that energy from me, right? It is undeniable at this point how all these things relate. And I am glad to sit here and tell you guys, I'm not going to just gatekeep this information and sit here and talk about, I'm talking about important categories, yes, but I want to prove to you guys, just by using my gift of real gab, like really I can talk to a fucking wall, but giving you guys the science, mixing it with the spirituality of just everything that goes on. Your existence as a human is a spiritual experience, right? We're not just a human with a body, right? You're not even a body with a soul. You are a spiritual being, a soul having a spiritual experience, whether you understand it or not. There's nothing you need to do to understand that you just existing is a spiritual experience in of itself. And in my Gnosticism series in this first season, I'm going to break down to y'all just where I kind of started doing my own research, and then we'll get into a couple episodes later more so the science behind it and things that it relates to, and how it relates to quantum physics and quantum computing and quantum, all of these things, how it relates to aliens, how it relates to UFOs, UAPs, reverse engineering, certain FOIA information that we found through declassified papers from 3-letter agencies about what they use, what they are, what these beings are doing, right? There's so many things that I want to bridge for y'all that it is like I said in another a TikTok of mine, I was talking about in a deep meditation, or I might have said it in my biofield episode. I had a meditation one time that told me that I was a conduit. And I was like, what the fuck is a conduit? I remember hearing something about it, maybe middle school. But whenever I went back and looked through, just started doing my own research, what's a conduit? What about through a human? How's it a conduit? It's like I am a processor of information, so I can point out the patterns. And, my favorite thing is to meet a new person and they just want to talk to me, and they won't stop talking to me, and they're asking me questions. And I've never met these people in my life. This happens more often, right? More and more often as time has gone on. They'll ask me questions, and I will be able to provide for them eloquently a series of questions or things that align with my series of questions to get somebody to be existential in a positive but inquisitive way within 20 to 30 minutes. That's just who I am, right? I'll be at a restaurant and somebody's going to sit down next to me, that's my waitress, and start telling me their life story. So today we're going to start off with the tip of the iceberg. What is Gnosticism? What am I talking about? Why am I talking about it? Does the government know about it? Is it proven historically? Who were the people that were talking about Gnosticism in historical timeframes, and how does it relate to other religions, right? And there is so much more interrelative things in ancient beliefs or current belief systems or current proof that we have from past historical proof that we have, that talk about how much more of a divine experience this is than putting us into these little tiny boxes of how we can identify ourselves, right? And I just want to show you guys how crazy this shit is, because I want to say the world around us, the people that rule this world, what I believe the 1%ers, they fucking know this is true, and this is how they can use it against us. So I want y'all to fucking put a thinking cap on, get out a fucking journal, start taking notes, because it's gonna be a wild ride. So I'm sure you're sitting here asking yourself, if you have never heard this word before in your life, and you've never heard me talk about it on my TikTok yet, what is Gnosticism? Okay. So, Gnosticism is not a religion. I want to start off there. It is a framework of living, right? And the awareness of, to me, a lens of seeing the world through the distortions of really the matrix that we live in. Okay. So I kind of want to relate it back to the Matrix. And if you haven't watched that movie, obviously go and watch it. It's a classic. You should have watched it already. But it's a lens of being able to point out through an experience that points you inwards. Okay. I truly believe our point as humans is not to transcend humanness, right? I believe it's figuring out that your body really is a technology, and you're supposed to be descending daily into your own brain And really, not even your brain. What I believe is your heart. I really believe that this is the framework of everything. Is as humans, if everyone were to do this, it would be like living on in heaven on earth, you know. But unfortunately, we live in a world where even people who think they believe in what they believe in are really not cultivating heaven on earth for others, and in fact imposing their own personal beliefs to make it hell on earth for others, right? So I want to get into, I've had to take many notes, you know. I have quite a few journals here with me, but I'm going to try to stick off of this bullet point that I have. But I want to get into first, I started off with the last 2 years. I read Mary Magdalene's Gospel, and then I started reading into the Nag Hammadi, which also contains some of the other lost Gospels. And there's a person I want to a reference to. Her name is Elaine Pagels, and she's one of my favorites because she wrote the book about the Nag Hammadi, right, and decoding them and thinking about what it means through a biblical lens, but also through a what they call like interfaith lens. So like so many religions have deep esoteric teachings, right? Whether Judaism or, you know, like even through other teachings like in the Middle East, like there's Sufism, or even for us in America, like for Christians, it would be Gnosticism, right? But Gnosticism is also the proof of the science to me, figuring out that plasma is also interrelated to this. And if you listen to my orb episode, I talked about plasma and how I had a vision one time, you know, during a deep meditation about plasma being all liquids of life. And it was taking me through like a flash picture movie, you know, of like every zero point 0.2 seconds of a different picture of like plasma being in everything, you know, and babies being in plasma and body fluids being plasma and water having plasma, food having plasma. Every living thing has plasma. And when I looked into it, how did I know? How did I know? And I didn't know. I've never been taught that. Then I found out 99.9% of the universe is fucking plasma. Your biofield is plasma because it's made out of biophotons, right? So we're going to get into all of that, right? I'm going to talk about how, you know, you could have coded consciousness because through DNA, that is like the encoding of a human body, of this meat suit that is the fucking vessel of which you are alive in, right? And how that you can have encoded consciousness and certain things that are supposed to play out in your life specifically to give you your own keys for you to figure out how to get to your highest timeline, right? And it doesn't necessarily need a third party to do so. It is between you and the source of all. There is no need for you to, and I want to say this, everything that I'm about to say in these episodes from here on out, you can go and look into for yourself. I'm not here to argue with anybody. If you think that Jesus Christ came here to die for your sins, or whatever religion you believe that person came here to die for your sins, or, you know, they died and you'll be fine if you do XYZ, go and do that. Go and believe that. I'm not here to argue. I'm just here to present to you why there is very deep esoteric teachings across the board, globally, historically, you know, all of this, all of the things that say and prove the same things scientifically. Okay. And if these are true and it relates to even aliens and UAPs and dimensions, bro, it fucks me up because the more I know, the more it's like, damn, like we really fight not against like just flesh and blood. It's not just you fighting against that. Yes, we're also fighting against, you know, people, but I'm also saying that it is bigger than that. It is scarier than that. It's like being on mushrooms 24/7 because the more you know, the more you can't be asleep to what you don't know anymore. It's literally once you inform yourself of things and you're given many of things to see it by, you can't deny it. So again, Gnosticism, it's not a a religion. It's, to me, what I feel like, the more that I've looked into it, the more I'm like, damn, I feel like I've always known this to be true, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't explain it. And the more that I've read into different gospels or to things about quantum physics or about fucking UAPs, you guys, are about three-letter agencies in our government and the things that they do and use against us on a daily basis. Patents. I gave y'all patents in my biofield episode. We can't fucking deny what is true because that means you don't know how to help yourself, right? So again, it's not a religion. It's just a lens of looking through everything and seeing the distortion, right? And what I believe is that every single person, right? We have a divine relationship with source that comes from within, and you do not have to beg for it or ask for it or whatever. You already have it. You already have the ability to communicate with your own biofield, and that communication is felt if 99.9% of the universe is made up of plasma, including every living thing. We're all in communication with each other instantaneously across galaxies, universes, dimensions. But today specifically, I want to get into with y'all who were the Gnostics, okay? And this was a group of different sects, so it was different groups of different sects of after Jesus died, people were kind of like, I don't care what y'all say. There's more writings about Jesus being a real alive person than there is of Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates together. Okay. And we teach that in college like it's nothing. So believe what you want about Jesus. But when you even look at Jesus' teachings, I just had so many questions. Again, if you don't know my backstory, I grew up in the church. I still believe in what Jesus had to say, but I have stepped away from the theology of what majority, Christian religions believe because it's so much bigger picture than that, right? We as humans are using magic all day long without even being aware of it, right? And you can be at the effects of magic around you without believing in it or thinking it's all demonic. If you don't have a way to protect yourself or you really don't know what you're doing, just praying to a God outside of you is not the only way. I'm not saying that praying or asking for something might not have, real effects, whether you know about this or not. Majority of us are in constant communication with source without being aware of it, right? But we're not aware of the other things going on that we're in battle with that we have questioned but not put together the pieces. So Gnostics, though, these were different sects of these people that put together all the past religions, because keep in mind, we had ancient Sumeria, which is like 2,000 years before Jesus was even born, right? And then we had ancient Egypt, right? And that was like 1,000 years before Jesus was born. So think about that. That's a long time. One thing that I did learn in fucking college when we were looking through like a historical timeline of just existence, I think it was in my geology class, not even in any other class, that we were looking at like a whole entire historical timeline of like how long we've been alive. It's not just like Jesus was born and that was the only timeline, especially if you grew up in the church or you're in the South. You hear BC and you literally just think, we were alive so much longer before that, okay? So there's so many other historical events religiously that happened and who the gods that they worshipped and all those things. But then when Jesus came, it was kind of like, okay, it kind of shook the world up to where different people had different awareness based upon the knowledge of all other religions prior to that, right? Including the Jewish beliefs, like there was the Essenes too. They also had their own belief system that had to do with Jewish mysticism, right? So there was like Essene Gnostics where they had practiced, Essene lineage or the daughters of Isis. The crazy thing is about all of these things that you can all go look into yourself. I will spend time in other episodes. We'll get into some of those other sects, but they have some of the same majority, same belief of what we are, which is that we are divine sparks of life, right? You are not just a fucking, unless you're an NPC, and we'll get into that another day, or a clone with no fucking soul, right? You already have a soul. You already have a spark of life. You don't have to ask for it. It's part of the game that we play is guess what? You get a soul when you're born, right? You're born from human DNA, right? You get a fucking soul. You don't have to ask for it. But you are trapped inside of a meat suit, okay? And we're going to get into how that relates to the simulation theory, how it relates to Adam and Eve, how it relates to Mary Magdalene, how it relates to even deeper esoteric teachings about cosmology known through the Gnostics, through what they practiced, which was called Gnosis, okay? So the Gnostics, Gnosis, Gnosticism, right? But Gnosis, I'm going to give y'all the definition that I wrote down. It was the Greek origin meaning like knowing, but not just like a regular knowing, okay? This is not like, oh, like I know the answer. No, it's like when you can't explain why one day you're driving home from work and you're like, today I'm going to take this route. I don't know why. Or, somebody calls you and you stay in your car to talk. And then when you hear about that part of the highway you normally drive on, there was a 18-car pileup. Huh. Right? Or you're thinking about somebody and you're thinking about maybe talking to them or apologizing or, I don't know, just an interaction with them, and you walk into the store and they're right there. It is that type of knowing that it is like instantaneous, like the stimuli being fed back loop to you, right? Just with your thought consciousness alone, okay? But that's pretty much what Gnosis is. It's like in quiet moments when you think to yourself, like, to me, since I was a kid, there's got to be more to the story. Even biblically, if I was in the church for 20 years, I grew up in the church since I was a baby. Even in my head, I'm like, there's some things missing here, like there's some things missing. And the more I read everything, including figuring out shit about plasma and science and dimensions, Jesus does play a role. Jesus does play a role. It's not necessarily what we think, and we'll get into it another time. But again, we're just talking about the basics of Gnostics, Gnosticism, who they were, what time period they popped up in. So again, different sects after Jesus had passed. And they put together a lot of other, religious or spiritual beliefs from the ancient Egyptians, Sumeria, the Essenes, talking about Jewish mysticism as well. But Gnostics saw the world as a, I love this. They saw the world as a spiritual initiation, right? And another thing that I had read about is they believe that our spiritual initiation on earth is through contrast, meaning we experience, right, what it is that heaven really is by what it's not, right? But you can see what heaven almost looks like in certain parts of the world, whether it's nature or through love, anything that's just beautiful and brings just like pure love and joy. That is slivers of heaven here on earth, right? But earth is inverted. It is not ran by loving humanistic beings that want the good for everybody, or else statistically, it has always been a 1% group of people, what we're going to call the elite ruling 1%. Okay. We'll get into other shit later on. That's going to be crazier and crazier. I've got shit to say about so many things, you guys, but we are up against something that is so deeply embedded, we don't even realize that it's 99.9% of us against probably 99 versus 1%. And like I said, in my biofield episode, I wanted to get the point across that we are not just physical beings. There is government patent technologies that are constantly, how the fuck can you think of something and then there's an ad that pops up on your phone? An ad pops up on your TV. There's patents to scan your biofield, scan your brainwaves in constant feedback loop, right? To a remote location, exactly what you're thinking already. We even had this last year or the year before that. McDonald's was proposing to give people dreams about McDonald's in their sleep. Baby, if they can sit there and scan your fucking brain, if I'm sitting here telling you that there's patents on ways they can manipulate it, what the fuck are we even talking about, right? And why are you not taught, if you can just pray for that to go away, why does it still exist more rampantly now than it ever has? Why are groups of people still being used in the worst of ways to be literal like rats in a simulation of a testing, groups in areas of life where people are literally being used as like test animals? There are so many ways that I could tell y'all today that we have ways to protect ourselves against shit like this, but we're just not taught about it. If you don't know what you're up against, you can't fight it, right? So again, Gnostics, they literally thought that we are here to experience what heaven is, right? Through what it's not. Let's continue. And when I talked about our biofields, knowing that you are not just a physical being, that you have an energetic field at least 6 feet out of you that has 7 layers deep, that they can scan and see something that's going to happen in your physical field before it happens. How is that possible? How is, your biofield made up of biophotons, which is plasma, right? How is these biophotons, they're communicating. Your DNA are receivers, right? I said that in my last episode. So if your DNA is calling out for shit, where are we downloading that from? How are these things being called out to us? How, I just found it so wild that it even relates to astrology and why your specific psychology, why you were born right where you were born to have a specific set of energy things, what I believe is your energy codes to your body that are supposed to play out for you in your life. The more I've read about astrology in depth about people's charts, the more I realize things are really written in the stars. Things are really predestined for you. Do you have a say? Yes. But do they teach you how to have a say? No. Right? At least even having awareness of something can change the trajectory of it, if you understand what I'm saying. And there's some things that I believe that are probably predestined no matter what, but at least in Gnosticism, them practicing Gnosis to them meant they would go and sit quietly, right? And start really talking within. And as they start talking to themselves more and more, what they realize is the more that they healed, which, they've done studies on meditation, go and look into it for yourselves, that with a human brain, within 8 weeks, if you just practice 10 to 20 minutes a day of meditation, within 8 weeks, people with PTSD, anxiety, depression, they will shrink their amygdala, I believe, or their hippocampus, one or the other, and the gray matter in their brain will grow. Think about that. You can build back neural links and grow your fucking gray matter to have more connections in your brain just off of fucking meditation, you guys. So to me, what is meditation doing? It's you're communicating how to unblock certain mental, emotional blockages because we fill our time with, do this, do that, do this, do that. Instead of sitting with our brains and bodies and going, what do we need today? What do we need to think about today? What do we need to go through today? What do we need to just work through, right? And the Gnostics understood that even when Jesus would go to perform miracles, right, he would need time before and afterwards to recuperate, right? It was an energetic transference thing. It wasn't just something that like he could do and it was easy peasy and it never fucked with him. You know what I'm saying? It was one of those things that he had to go and sit down and meditate in the woods for a couple of days before and after, or go do some breath work. The right things that Christians deem demonic. It's just so wild that Christians will deem demonic yoga or breathwork sometimes. I've seen some crazy people, whether on threads, on TikTok, comments, just insane people sitting there. To me, it shows your IQ is not that high, babe. If you can't figure out that science can also literally prove what I believe is why you can't spiritually bypass through other religious tendencies, right? If you believe you have to have a third party tell you what to do and how to be, or you, in terms of like a physical person on this earth that is just the same human like you and me, how to get to heaven or how to not go to hell, we've lost the plot. Okay, just because you believe in what you believe in your religion, at least these what I'm trying to tell y'all through Gnosticism, it's more of a lens of how I see life, right? It's not a judgment system. To me, I believe that you came here to do something specifically that I'm not here to do, right? And every single mistake I've ever made, that's on me. You know what I'm saying? I am not the ultimate source creator of you, you know what I'm saying? But me and you are interlinked, and your journey is interlinked with my journey, right? And I believe that if we're imposing hell on others, right, then we have work to do. And as above, so below, and Hermeticism, that's one of the sayings, right? But to me, it's also as above, so below, right? What's going on up there for y'all Christians to understand this, and another, lens is what's going on down here between all of us. I believe politics is revealing that the darkness, through the darkness comes the light, right? So in the Gospel of Thomas, a quote that I want to give y'all too is that it says, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. Right? Jesus taught in parables, you guys. Why? Why did Jesus, when he was with Mary Magdalene, if you go and read Mary Magdalene's gospel, so profound, changed me forever. I sobbed. Like it was just another giant chunk of the puzzle piece that was missing that made my soul feel so seen and valued, and just that's more of the God I would believe is the true God, not the God that runs this earth, this prison fucking planet. Don't go to the lights, motherfuckers, because that's how they get you to come back. But we're gonna get to that, okay? So this spark, right, this divine energy inside of you, I really do believe that if you start really awakening yourself to that this is a fucking trap, right? You stop forgetting that, and you start finding ways to ensure that, number one, feeling shame, feeling fear, guilt, those are some of the lowest level frequencies your body can give off. Not to say you as a human, you cannot spiritual bypass feelings that you have, right? But instead of doing that, you become the observer of your feelings. Feelings are not bad to have, right? And yes, they can come and go, but they are more so keys of what's going on inside of you psychologically, right? And Gnosis is the practicing really of also becoming aware of your personal repetitive patterns. Even for myself, constantly question myself, Taylor, why'd you do that? Why did you try to crash out like that? Why did you try to say that, do that, get mean back? Like, it's a constant being like, fuck, like, but you can't make yourself feel shame about it. You can't change through shame. Shame is literally one of the lowest level frequencies you can give off, right? You can't be heart-centered and still live in shame on a constant basis, okay? So Gnostics believe instead of you making yourself feel shame, you start to just question yourself in like a loving observer way. Like, hey, why did you do that? If I started to have a suicidal thought today, again, I used to be, if you know my story, hyper, suicidal ideation, wanting to kill myself majority throughout all my childhood to teenage years. I was a very loving, empathic child, but through that empathy grew a lot of just people pleasing tendencies that got me into more trauma. And then that turned into me being hypersexual, me feeling very unloved, unseen, unheard, had my own family generational trauma imposed on me, and just unknowingly nobody understood our family's generational trauma because nobody had been given the science or the tools to do it yet, and so I was one of the few that finally in my adulthood I had to look into what are these puzzle pieces missing, whether it's psychology or cosmology or interpersonally something is missing from these beliefs. But to me, the Gnostics sitting there saying it's really about a descent into your heart every day and asking yourself in a loving way, why do we have these egoic tendencies? Why do I do this? Why do I say this? But not like you need to feel shame about it. Like you are a fucking human, right? And one of my favorite quotes by Mary Magdalene is that this is where it's going to sound heretical, but I don't care. Y'all can nickname me your favorite heretic if you want, for all I give a shit. But one of my favorite quotes by Mary Magdalene, sin is not real, ignorance is. What she means by that, y'all, when she's sitting there talking about, if somebody commits something like an atrocity against another human, it's them forgetting who that person is and who they are, right? Because ultimately, Gnostics also believe we all come from the same divine light, the same source, right? It's not a big man in the sky. It's a energetic source that emanations have come from, that humans have come from those emanations, right? And to me, it just makes so much more sense that God is bigger than the God that runs this planet. And even some biblical theology also points to a false God that runs the planet when they talk about Satan or Lucifer, you know what I'm saying? The false God that runs this planet. But we don't even know, Jesus Christ is not even Jesus' real name. Jesus' real name was Joshua, right? Yeshua, Joshua was Jesus' real name. And Christ is not his last name. It's not Christ given from his fucking dad, right? Christ is derived from the meaning anointed ones, right? And Christ also derives from the word Christos, which in Greek means the giver of knowledge or the divine knowledge, right? Meaning plural when it says Christos, right? We can all be anointed. We can all be divine. When Jesus said, you will do this and more. How would we bring humans back from the dead? How would we, when you learn about biofield and healing, energetic work, people that do Reiki don't seem so fucking crazy. At least ones that actually know what they're doing and they're not, falsely trying to attempt it. People that actually have understood what now is just now being proven by science. That is Gnosis, right? Like I said, you even thinking turn this way today, that's Gnosis. You listening to something that is such a deep intuitive thing that it's almost like something is speaking to you outside of you, but it is you or through you. We all have the capability, right? And the thing is that I believe the government tries to find ways to entrap you into this material realm through all kinds of different ways, whether politics, material, wealth, whatever, these things that we all kind of have issues with, myself included. I'm not trying to sit here and say that I don't have the same issues that I'm going to talk about, but at least in Gnosis, it made so much sense. The more that I practiced sitting quiet myself, the more information I was given about decisions or what not to do or what to do, and even when I didn't want to listen to it and I made a mistake, I was like, damn, okay, it made sense. I gotta start just listening to myself more and not feeling so combative against it, right? We've been taught to not trust our intuition and to rely on whether the government or a therapist. Not to say you shouldn't go to therapy if you can afford it, right? Because I do think that therapists can also be a great tool, especially ones that are aware of what this is, right? Without having to even bring it to you. But what I'm sitting here saying is Gnostics knew it's deeper than just there's a God, there's a devil, and that's it. No, where do UAPs come into play? Where do, three-letter agencies performing things on energetic basis or, having patents against our energy? Where do they talk about that? They don't. They say you just got to pray. Has that stopped any fucking, school shooting from happening? Has that stopped any fucking person from dying or getting raped or no, no, no. So, I want to talk about a couple of, you know, historical roots of Gnosticism too. So if the Gnostics were this group of people that believed that's what Jesus was doing, is descending into his heart, right? To practice that, there was other things that you can look through, and some other, historical things like Buddhism. They call the Maya like the illusion of the world, right? Or Hinduism, souls, they have a divine essence. Or Zoroastrianism, I hope I'm not butchering that, and my white ass, I'm so sorry if I am, but they were the oldest religious with a monotheistic god, whereas light versus darkness consciously, right? So it's light versus darkness consciously, which I believe still all these things saying the same thing, just in different ways, right? Or like I said, the Sufi or the Kabbalah, or I just can't believe it even interrelates into when we look at energetics, right? Through some of the lens of like, we are more powerful and have more power than we're aware of, right? When you understand frequency and how your body can be aligned with certain frequencies, but also it can be thrown off by certain frequencies. So think about 5G towers, think about EMF from your phone. These are scannable things that have been known to lower sperm count, to lower your biofield scannably. Fuck are we talking about, right? And the Gnostics say that there's ways that you can use your plasma consciously to heal yourself, heal others, communicate through space-time. Think about us finding out about cellular memory in people's hearts. And even if the heart is anonymously donated, people have been able to see the past memories of the person whose heart was donated without even knowing who they are, communicating with them, especially through the heart. Cellular memory, you guys, DNA is real. We can communicate through time space with our fucking if you're with me, you're with me. If you're not, that's okay. Maybe this is just too deep for you. This is just episode 1. Like I said, like, this is crazy. Like, I really do believe that, when Gnostics say the God that we were taught to worship, right? They literally say that he's the false creator, the counterfeit, right? He believes I am the God, the only one. Think about the Old Testament God, just angry, wrathful, so much weird shit going on back then. Trying to ask people to sacrifice all this shit. That is not, you think God imposes on free will like that? You know what I'm saying? I believe that things that are supposed to happen, yes, but I do believe that we have powers that we've been desensitized to and made believe not real, but they talk about it every day in movies, every day in shows, every day they have government patents on it. You don't think they believe in it, but they're paying for shit for it? Babe, come on, we gotta get more real, right? But y'all want to know what they call this false god of the earth? Before I get into some of the other historical points and just like main theology of it, it was the Demiurge, okay? So the Demiurge produced a human through the material birth of the material realm, okay? And portrayed himself as God, okay? So that Demiurge, the name of the being that was birthed from it, was called Yaldabaoth, right? And he wanted to entrap the earth, right, into a net, right? So think about ley lines. Think about literal energetic points. They put CERN on a ley line. There's plenty of ritual bases where they do crazy shit. Army bases, military bases, probably black sites on ley lines because the veil is fucking thinner, you guys. So of course, for rituals to be done. So of course, for CERN, for fucking portals, who knows? Of course that shit is on there, bro. Of course it is. Because the ley lines are energetic points. Earth has chakras just like us as humans have chakras, right? And there's more to chakras than we even understand. The more research I do, the more I find out. It's more than that. Okay? But Gnosis is the key out. Gnosis is the way for you to understand if you see something outside, if it's a UAP or UFO or whatever, you could use Gnosis to sit there and talk to your body and be like, what, do I feel fear from this? If the word is yes, if you are being abducted and your free will is being infringed upon, it's probably serving the false god of this realm and not serving the source of all, right? Because that source of all doesn't want you to be in fear or being genetically imposed upon without your fucking conscious will. You know what I'm saying? But I digress. We'll continue. So if you look back when they were creating it, and some of these other, the main sects of Gnostics, they were called the Sethians and the Valentinians, right? The Sethians came from the son Seth, from Adam and Eve, right? They had Cain, Abel, and then they had Seth, right? And think of Cain and Abel's story, but Seth had a different journey, right? So the Sethians, right? They were just pretty much teachers who preserved Gnosis through, like I said, Gnosticism was not just about Jesus Christ or being a Christian. Christianity wasn't a thing until after the Bible happened, in the time of Constantine. Then they went around and killed people. If you weren't a Christian and all this shit, it didn't survive just randomly, right? This was by being state sanctioned religion, where you would be killed if you did not believe what that religious leader believed of that time, right? So the Gnostics were pretty much, they just preserved Gnosis, and it was embedded through Egyptian mysticism, through Jesus' teachings, through Zoroastrianism, right? I'm sorry, I keep fucking that word up. But again, even other Jewish mysticism plays into it, about dimensions, about where we came from, about the divine feminine. Oh, I can't wait to get into the episode about the feminine aspect of this story and how it plays out through Mary Magdalene too, and that she comes from a woman. We're going to talk about Sophia, okay? And there's so many things I want to say, but ultimately is that the story that we've been told and told again does not make sense when it comes to, why is the God of this planet always serving the 1%? Why are they still the ones? If the God you're praying to is still serving the 1%, we're praying to the wrong fucking God. Or we don't know who we're praying to, and we need to start getting real specific and aware with our intention, right? And I don't believe that it's something that you're praying to outside of you. I believe you need to start talking and descending inwards, right? Because if we can use science to bridge that gap, and see that there is science behind your plasmic fields, and doing meditation instead of just praying and leaving it up to the Lord's. Let's just spiritual bypass, and the Lord's going to take care of it. But meanwhile, I'm going to have all these diseases and issues and problems in my relationships with people, and still have anxiety and still have depression, but I'm going to be on medication until I die. Baby, it's because you haven't dealt with what's going on within. And I promise you, practicing Gnosis, going within, really will help you work through every single thing that you don't understand what's going on with you, and why these patterns keep patterning, right? And the church wanted, I want to get into this too, the church wanted to suppress this. There is things we can prove how the church suppressed this. Why the fuck? I want to ask again. I come to you again, and I'm asking you, why was Mary Magdalene's gospel not in the Bible? She was with Jesus the most. First person Jesus talked to. Only person that stayed at the foot of his cross when all the other apostles started running and hiding because they were scared it was going to happen to them. She was at the tomb with sacred oils and herbs to anoint their Lord and Savior, knowing that they could have got hung or crucified just as much, or whatever the case may be. Why is her gospel not in there? You want to know why, you guys? Because when you read it, it changes the whole theology of what salvation looks like. Salvation is not saying Jesus died for your sins. Jesus did not die for your sins, everybody. I'm going to tell y'all that right now. Jesus Christ did not die for our sins. You want to know what happened? Is that Jesus Christ was a representation of what happens to people who are a light in the world. Jesus said, be like me, right? Be like me. Jesus did not say, worship me, ask me into your heart. That is not what Jesus did not say those words ever, right? When they say do not rely on your own understanding, the Bible is interpretive. So I want to hear through the lens of Mary Magdalene. And when she is saying things that completely make way more sense and provide me and millions of other people who have read her gospel with pieces of the puzzle that just make sense, right? So again, when Mary said sin is not real, ignorance is. Ignorance of who you even truly fucking are, and thinking that you have to ask a God outside of you to come in your heart and save you. You think that's going to fix with what you have going on psychologically? No. What happens is it dives down into your DNA encoding. Literally, this is proven now through epigenetics, and then your grandchildren and great-grandchildren are going to have to figure out a way to heal through trauma that you never did because you spiritually bypassed and thought that you were saved. Jesus wanted you to be like him and to descend into your fucking heart every day. And if your political beliefs, religious beliefs, interpersonal beliefs are not rooted in love on a day-to-day basis and self-awareness and self-reflective, There's no shame to be felt about if you're not, but what it is you need to start asking yourself more questions. Be more, descend more into your heart. Start looking inward. Start asking yourself questions, because every day we have shit we could all work on, right? And again, the church did not want y'all to sit here and understand that about how powerful you are. That way you have to rely on them, right? Again, state sanctioned religion. The Council of Nicaea was brought together, overseen by the Romans, okay? Overseen by the Romans. The Romans who crucified Jesus oversaw the put together of the Bible. You think they wanted all the right? Anything that has made it has been designed to be not helping us out, right? The thing that where they fucked up is that Jesus was too powerful, right? To where his story got out. So even though there's some Christians out there that I can't understand the rhetoric of, being so far right wing that now we're descending into fascism, but not also being heart centered. You do not know who Jesus is at his core if you are still not heart centered and you understand there's other lives out there that have experienced way more things. How privileged you are. Jesus would have been a dark skinned brown man from Palestine. He would have been an immigrant. You Christians today don't even understand your own history. You have been whitewashed and brainwashed in many more ways than one, right? And if you're not being introspective of your beliefs and questioning yourself on a day-to-day basis and doing your own research while we're descending into fascism, what the fuck are you doing with your life? What are you doing? What are you doing? People's lives are literally becoming more at stake every single day because of others' refusals to start looking inwards. I don't give a fuck who you are, how much money you have, what you think about yourself. Jesus wanted you to be introspective and be heart-centered about it. Okay? Some of you are not heart-centered about a fucking thing, but you claim you know Jesus. He does not know you, babe. He doesn't know you. He wants to know you. I just want to say that, though, right? Because, again, we are all divine sparks, and that's something that I'm having to work on. Even people that, Jesus, God, source of all, not the false God of this earth, loves us so much that even if you want to be ignorant of that higher power of us all, that it's all of us together, when in reality, you are just as much a part of that as another person or as that source itself, right? You are just as powerful, okay? You are literally a part of God because you are God, right? There's other parts of the Gnostic text that I want to talk about, right? That explain this. But again, in Gnosis, in the Gnostics, in their theories, whenever they're talking about, Jesus and how they viewed it, that was a blood sacrifice that was forced by the religious, Pharisees and shit like that of that time, and the government regime of that time, the Romans. He was crucified not to be like, oh, like, no, sin won't exist or you can go to heaven now. No, no, no. Because what he was saying in parables, right? If he said blatantly, he would have been stoned to death immediately if he were to say the words, you are God. So he tried to speak in parables, but with Mary Magdalene, he spoke directly. And she understood him very well, because as a woman does, baby, we are the portals to the other side. And this is why I believe, too, the suppression of the divine feminine, even in Christianity, through Judaism, even through, through Muslim beliefs, there is a suppression of what women are, right? We're supposed to be subservient. So by taking the divine feminine and erasing it, which what I believe through, erasing Mary Magdalene's gospel, literally having it buried to where, when they burn, think about that Library of Alexandria and how many documents about, female goddesses, women goddesses that were worshipped, and the female attributes throughout Egyptian, think about Isis, then think about in ancient Sumeria, Anana, right? Where they both had to do with the resurrection. Why are you not taught that Jesus' resurrection is not the first historical thing about a resurrection? Because they were both women before that. Let's keep going. So if they're taking out Mary Magdalene, right? And like I said, we'll talk about Sophia and how Sophia's, how Yaldabaoth came into play, the Demiurge, the material, God who thought that he is the God, right? He didn't understand. He came from Sophia, that came from the source, which is what I believe. It's the monad, which is what Gnostics talk about, is the monad, right? Which is the source of all, the divine light, the pleroma, right? Y'all might start hearing some of these words pop up because more and more people are starting to get into Gnosticism and realizing this makes so much sense when it comes to quantum physics and to UAPs and to the aliens, right? Again, we'll have to do a whole episode on that, but I gotta break this down for y'all. So erasing the story about Sophia, erasing Mary Magdalene's gospel, it to me, it lessened women's power specifically because when women are in power, we can empower men, right? Because even, the patriarchy we live in still extends to hurting men, right? Even if a man doesn't want to understand that. Whereas matriarchy, even if it's centered around children and mothers, right? That would mean better childhoods for the future men, right? That means that better, healthier, mentally, more emotionally stable, less violent men, right? We'll keep going. So if lessen somebody's power that can help, empower others, to me, I feel like it's because it helps them to be able to control people. Because if they weren't in control, right? Like I said, some of the first women that were burned, Gnosticines or herbalists or midwives, right? They literally thought women should suffer in childbirth because Eve ate the apple, and any woman that would ease labor pains should be put to fucking death. That is why midwives were also burned at the stake, because they were witches and they were helping women not be in pain during birth, and that's evil demonic shit, baby. No. They do not want you to understand that even you making a wish on a fucking birthday candle is magic, baby. The things you're saying, even the things you're thinking about somebody, that is magic whether you realize it or not. You don't have to be practicing magic with some fucking bones and blood for you to realize there is magic at play all the time that you're playing in, even as a Christian, right? In fact, the way you think about people, you're emanating more negative shit for entities to feed off of you, off of people around you, because you're such a lower level vibrational person when you're talking about shit. Not on some new age spiritual bullshit, but literally, the more you think negatively, it breaks down your biofields, a scannable thing, to where entities can feed off of you. Again, be introspective. Start asking yourself questions. Why are they taking out the divine feminine? These stories of these women, why are they related to resurrection? How, if Christos and Sophia were the first emanations from the monad, and that is like historical shit that they talk about through other religions, different names given to the same divine feminine, divine masculine attributes that play out in all other religions and spiritual beliefs. Right? So how can we affirm, what these missing gospels were? And remember, I told you about Elaine Pagels and the Nag Hammadi, right? And in the Nag Hammadi, some of those texts were older than some of the Old Testament. That's fucking insane, okay? And the Mary Magdalene gospel is in there, but the Gospel of Thomas was in there too, so it was reaffirmed. Think about like the Dead Sea Scrolls for canonical texts, which there's other stuff in the Dead Sea Scrolls that also talk about Gnosticism theories, right, in there. But the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, Philip, the Apocrypha of John, like I said, some of them being older, the other texts in there, than the Old Testament, right? And I want to tell y'all another saying from the Gospel of Thomas that I saw that I feel like is just related to this. It says, the kingdom is inside you, and it is outside you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known. If you do not know who you are not known. You do not know what it is like to have the kingdom within you, okay? Until you understand who you are at your core, and that there is no middleman that you have to worship outside of you when that divine essence is already within you, okay? So it's not just about the church, but I want to explain to y'all that it's really about the blueprint of control, how they inverted, using the cross. Like I even want to get my cross covered up on my hand, because now when I look at it, it just didn't make sense to me why we like worship him being crucified on a cross. When you think about the implications of that, him being a blood sacrifice actually by the political and religious regime of that time. Jesus did not like organized religion. The Gnostics believe the cross is like a representation of blood sacrifice when you try to be a light in the world. Why do we want to worship that? I don't want to worship that. Literally, it didn't make sense to me as a child, and now reading it through this lens, I'm like, that's fucking what, that makes sense. That makes sense. And no, you don't need something to make it make sense for you, but when you find a text like this that is historically proven, that has been, parts of it older than the Old Testament, that also has to do with other ancient knowledge and spiritual beliefs and systems, right? But it's really about the blueprint of control. And that's why I want to talk to you about other things that has to do with it, right? So whether it's erasing the divine feminine, burning, the Gnostic gospels, literally, like I said, the Library of Alexandria. There was monks who knew what they were trying to do and they went and hid shit. It's like right now in fascism, as they're trying to, take away these books and, make sure that you can't get public funding if you have these books in your library and all that shit. There's going to be people that are going to put, to me, what I feel like people should start doing is putting those books in the free libraries that are outside for like kids in neighborhoods and shit. Because there's going to be people that are right now buying books. It's happening. They're buying books that are being taken out and taken away because they don't want people to know about them, because they show you what history is or what this is like and what that's like. This, the Library of Alexandria with the Gnostic text, was the same thing, but there was monks that knew it. And also keep in mind, so many biblical, stories and stuff, especially in the Old Testament, were handed down orally until somebody wrote them later on. And yes, some of them were reaffirmed through other old writings like the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? But again, same thing applies to why they took out certain texts, because it changes the theology, okay? So, those other gospels, but those same systems right now are experimenting. The same people that are in charge, they're experimenting on our human bodies, okay? And examples that I'm going to get into later on in maybe other seasons, a couple examples I'll give in this season, like Nikola Tesla and his tech that he created, right? How it was stolen, suppressed, and then used, and now it's being used against us, right? That even Nikola Tesla's technology was based upon vibration and frequencies of Earth, right? And go look into Tesla towers, and why even, oh my gosh, JP Morgan trying to give him a fucking loan for it, right? And then finding out that he's not going to be able to charge anybody for it. And that's all of a sudden he winds up dead as he's broke alone in a hotel. And in 4 hours, a government agency goes to pick up all of his teachings and workings, right? And his brother tried to get there first. And when his brother got there, right, eventually his brother died in a crazy way. Anytime somebody dies of a heart attack or suicide, right, just understand if they had something to do with free energy or outing out some 3-letter agency or public, things that they don't want the public to know, it was the government, babe. Just like the saying, the next time you think the government wouldn't do that, yes, the fuck they would, right? But it also has to do with, even to me, thinking about my racism episode, why Black people, especially African Americans in America specifically, right? Why they have been targeted. I want y'all to go watch the movie They Cloned Tyrone. That shit is real as fuck. Literally made my stomach hurt because instantaneously I was like, they're literally just showing us. They're showing us, bro, exactly what they're doing. They don't hide it anymore. They make movies about it and let you watch it. Why though are specifically, like, to me, the DNA of any Black person, right? Why are they being targeted specifically, right? You don't have to just be from Africa. You don't have to just be from America. Why? Because even when you think about if genetics play a factoring role in all of this shit, right? Including in plasma and technology, and why do, aliens want to take fucking DNA from people and all kinds of shit? If you think about the DNA from the original first people that were alive on this planet, scientifically has been proven that it is from a Black woman, okay? I want you to start understanding this, because eventually I'm going to talk about Tartaria too, and it has to do with, there's so many things. Even in my geology class, we talked about Pangea, how all the continents literally used to be together. There is so much repressed shit that we have not been taught about our true history, right? And it makes so much sense why Black bodies are targeted, because their DNA and genetics. There are certain things, if you think about oh my gosh, what's the movie where he goes with his white girlfriend, whatever, where he goes with his girlfriend to the white family, and then they find out that they're literally taking Black bodies and like switching out their brains, or maybe cellular biology. There's so many creepy, dark conspiracy theories y'all can go down about billionaires that specifically use Black women's bodies for certain things, and y'all can go and look down that rabbit hole yourselves. But I want people to understand how it relates to even the Gnostic theories about entities that reside, like Yaldabaoth, right? False creator of this earth. We're about to get into, the more in-depth theology of Gnostics, but how they use invisible entities to feed off of all humans whenever they're going through shame, fear, guilt, right? Think about rituals, whether it's satanic ritual abuse, think about 13 bloodlines, things we will get into later on, right? They use them through invoking through emotion, right? So through shame, through guilt, it opens up gateways, right? Think about Stranger Things as well. Opens up portals, MK Ultra, to other dimension time spaces where things that are might not be good could reside, right? And on a daily basis, though, if our human eyes can only perceive 0.001% of light, there's shit all around us. Think about your phone, think about Bluetooth, think about Wi-Fi, satellite, all around us, biophotons communicating through plasmic fields, okay, on a regular basis. So it would make sense them targeting any black body that has the most ancient DNA, probably the most powerful codes embedded in it. Okay, because we have not been told the true history. They want people to not understand their roots, whether white people, we're even going to get into like how we were a, deformity of DNA and why I believe so many white people, I haven't gone and seen Sinners yet, but even the theology of what I've heard about it, I just think white people genetically, how we were crafted, what I believe is how we were genetically crafted, right? Because we were not the original DNA. We are a defect genetic mutation, right? Meaning we were not the original, we are a mutation. That means that somebody was fucking with some DNA at some point, right? And we'll get into somebody named Yakub at some point, and it even relates to they clone Tyrone. Think about the ending of the movie. That is real Jewish mysticism that they talk about. Yakub creating fucking again, we'll get into that another day because I don't want to give too much time to that, but has to do with DNA, right? Has to do with what I feel like, why white people consciously have more of a predisposition to just evil principalities, right? Like it is like they are half NPCs, half of the population of white people. Think about voting wise, voting for their own demise, not thinking about their own rights, thinking that they're higher than somebody just because of their races. I can't understand racism. Like it just like it's just crazy to me, right? To think about. And then when I think about plasma and I think about EMF and knowing the effects of how it's fucking up kids, how it's fucking up us, how it creates diseases, more cancer. That's fucking insane, right? And then you're thinking about plasma tech and thinking about inverted ways like Tesla, right? How the first UFO crash was within a year or so of Tesla dying. And it was because they had gotten a hold of something that could send out scalar resonant waves, which is what Tesla created. And then bloop, out fell the first UAP out of the dimension it crash landed. It didn't just happen on accident, right? There's people that were in some of these, military bases, probably black sites that were literally trying to summon shit, right? And when they were trying to summon demons, it looked like a big-headed gray. What y'all think about that? And now I'm not going to sit here and say every single alien is going to be a fucking demon. What I am going to say is that if they are abducting, they're performing anything on you, if they're making you feel fear, instantly just know they're not here to serve you as the human. Okay? They know what your body can be used for. Okay? If humans can give off energy that can be siphoned, think about fucking trolls. At least, especially the second troll movie, but eating something innocent, even the QAnon fans, y'all are so close to getting the point, but it's so much deeper than that. And for you to think that Trump is to be your savior, you literally do not understand what this world is. You are still so asleep. You think you're awake, and you're still so asleep. It's so much deeper than that. Anybody that's here to say that they're going to save you, or that you need a, whatever, this or that, or they're going to, people that want to take away your rights and that are serving the 1% are not here to serve you. Again, you will never be a billionaire. 99% of us, it's 99% of us versus the 1%. Fuck, I don't even care if you have $10 million. You're still never going to be a billionaire. Go look into videos where they explain how long it would take to be a billionaire. There's no ethical way to become a billionaire. It is only off of slavery and atrocities that people become billionaires. I digress. So, what are the core beliefs of the Gnostics? Some core beliefs, like I said, started off with the pleroma, right? The monad, the source. That's why I like to call it source. I'm trying to literally retrain my brain to stop saying just God, because I know what I'm saying, but I don't want people to think I'm saying the God of this world. That's not what I'm talking about. Source, right? But it's called the pleroma, and the pleroma in Greek means fullness, okay? And the Gnostics referred to it as the monad, but after that, right, the first thing that happened was from that came a reflection of source, okay? So the source was like the source of light, but from it came like a reflection of it, right? And that name that they call is Barbelo. So like the cosmic like mother and father of of all, I guess the source, right? I really want to say the cosmic mother and father would be, in our realm is probably Christos, Sophia. But from them two came the aeons, right? So whenever you think about, even, for Christians, demons that can give material thing by name, you call them by name, invoke them by name, and they can give you material things specifically. Think of aeons as like the highest of high, above angels even, right? And they are emanations of source. So Sophia is like wisdom, okay? But Christos, right, the divine masculine, because all the aeons came in pairs. They're the Zygeises is what they're called, I believe. I hope I'm not butchering that. And Sophia and Christos were the first two emanations from Barbelo and the monad, right? So the monad was right there, it was everything. And then Barbelo came, and then them together had the first emanations. So wisdom and divine word, logos, right? So wisdom and logos, Sophia and Christos, the first divine masculine and feminine. Sophia decided to attempt to create on her own because she was so in awe of source. Not because she was sinful, but because she loved creation. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about where a dimension where you are so interconnected. You are not this body, right? If you were just a light source, it would be like being in nirvana, like you are just floating with pure consciousness. You don't need anything. You don't need a body. You don't need sensations. It is just, it just is. It's just being, right? And from them, those aeons, like I said, the first two, Christos and Sophia. Sophia wanted to create like source, and she did it though without her consort, without Christos, right? So when she did that, she created the Demiurge, which was like material realm, because they could play with stuff, but there's higher realms. And then whenever she did that, she fell through, right, through a couple layers to where she accidentally, in that, when she created, she saw that it was flawed because she did it without her divine consort. Not because she was a sinful being or sinful emanation, but because she loved so much that she wanted to create as well. So when she saw she had her fall through the dimensions, right, through the to the physical realm. She saw that there was flaws, and when she did create the what they call the demiurge, the material realm, it birthed the first god like entity that I said the name was Yaldabaoth, right? Yaldabaoth thought he was the highest god, right? So he attempted to emanate God, right? And in the Old Testament, even saying certain things that he did this or did that or whatever was like an attempt of a recreation of what true source is like, okay? And in that, he created, so he's a false, high a being, right? Of ignorant of the higher realms above him, but because he is in a higher awareness realm of we are, he thinks he's above us, right? Because he is technically, but it doesn't mean he's here for your highest good, because he still believes in hierarchy, right? Think about why patriarchy is still ruled, because the earth is still ruled by a masculine entity that believes it is the highest source, not wanting us to all be in nirvana with each other, not wanting us to return to source, because he is ignorant of his own just sense of self, right? So, because of that, because he's cut off, I just want y'all to understand that, like, what it means, just the implications of the world we live in. So, when we think about like control, fear, separation, right? It's created through our cutoff from source, through our separation from source, right? And Yaldabaoth purposefully, think about when they talk about like ancient tribes that say there was a golden age before the moon, right? And souls were more free to come back and forth. There's all kinds of stories y'all can go and look into. And then when came the moon, something happened to where it was like Earth's grid was entrapped. That was when I believe Yaldabaoth came, okay? And we can get into fallen angels and shit like that later, because yes, it does relate, okay? But in this though, Yaldabaoth created the false matrix, right? Yaldabaoth didn't want you to understand that you're in a matrix, so Yaldabaoth wants to keep you entrapped here. Because when Yaldabaoth came here, he created his own entities, right? Because again, he is a god, right? A god of this earth, but not true source God, okay? Created what they call, in the Gnostics call, archons, okay? Archons are, think about a virus in a video game. They're like the virus in the simulation. Invisible interdimensional entities that feed off of humans, when we are in fear, when we are in shame, when we are in guilt, right? So even children, if they are being fed, religious theology or any even just psychological talk through, intergenerational trauma, if it is making a child feel fear, shame, guilt, those entities are feeding off of them. Those entities are feeding off of you, right? Think about people that it's like they have no soul left, and it's because their spark has been fed off of so much. Think about, even in Harry Potter, right? Even though it's fuck J.K. Rowling, but she is giving information subconsciously that she doesn't even realize. Think about the oh my gosh, Dementors when they're sucking the life out of them, right? Those are like archons, but we can't see them, okay? And a lot of times they reside in your biofield, but specifically over your head to where you're blocked from receiving from the divine through your crown chakra, or, there's other chakras above that we'll get into another time. But archons, they are literally his enforcers, okay? And in Gnosticism, they govern the seven heavens, okay? What are the seven heavens? It makes sense. 7 planets, 7 days of the week, 7 chakras, 7 layers of your biofield. 7. There's 7 planetary gates, right? And it's like dimensional layers that you have to get to. And their job is to trap you at one of those gates. That's their job, okay? So yes, they have them there, but they also have ones that are here on Earth that feed off of you because it feeds into the matrix system to keep them alive. Because if simultaneously we all were to reside in love at the same time, it would break this fucking matrix. Literally, it would be like we could leave and come back here freely, right? So keep that in the back of your head. Their job is to keep souls trapped here, right? They want to attach you through fear, desire, or general attachment to anything material. Anything material. So even for myself, it's like, okay, like I know I want to do what I feel I'm being called to do, but I don't want to do it for the money. I want to do it because I believe that everyone should understand this so we can live in a different way and be more in touch with each other and more in tune with ourselves, really, because the more in tune we are with ourselves, the better the world will fucking be, because we're more in tune with the actual source and not the false god that is hovering over this fucking reality using fucking enforcers that are invisible entities feeding off of us. Okay? And Sophia's divine spark, right? Sophia is the reason we have this divine spark. Think about the Old Testament when he talked about he made them from clay. That's like some fucking weirdo clone shit, right? Making a being that has no soul, right? And how did they get this awareness that they were trapped inside of a matrix, right? How, right? Especially because I don't believe they were the first humans. I believe they were the first ones that were given this gift of Gnosis. How did that come about? This is where we get into the Adam Eve, creation story. When Eve was in the garden and she took a bite of that apple and the serpent was telling her, you surely will not die, okay? You surely will not die. You will know of good and evil. Why is that demonized? Why is knowing between good and evil, or what it is, where they were, Adam and Eve, why is that demonized? Because that was Sophia, the serpent. Because when Sophia had her fall, bloop, she sacrificed herself into the nature of Earth itself. Think Mother Nature is Sophia, okay? Every living thing, a divine spark, right? That apple held Gnosis, okay? Took a bite of that apple. Instantly, Eve was made aware, like being on mushrooms. Oh my gosh, I'm in a fucking simulation. Oh my gosh, I'm trapped inside of a meat suit. Oh my gosh, we're in a fucking garden and there's a dude walking around here saying that he is God and that I'm going to die if I do this. Why? Why would you die if you had knowledge about what you're entrapped in? Only the person that's trying to enforce it doesn't want you to know you're being trapped. The best way to keep somebody trapped is not let them know they're trapped. That's how the simulation works, is none of you are aware of it, so you keep playing into it on your day-to-day decisions, your lives, your choices, right? Sophia is the reason that when Eve ate that apple, she was like, oh my gosh, Adam, you gotta fucking eat this apple, right? Because in reality, I always used to laugh and joke and say, they lied. It was Adam that ate the apple. That's why they have Adam's apple, But in reality, it's because a man was the one who really, a masculine entity was really the one who lied initially to them. That's the Gnostics believe the Old Testament. They starting off by telling you the story that way immediately makes you scared to have critical thinking skills and ask yourself, why do they not want me to know, more information than what's outside of the Bible? Because they're like, oh, be careful what's outside of the Bible. If you read outside the Bible, it's like you have an ongoing murder investigation series that multiple more people keep getting involved in these murders, and you just can't figure out how they relate, but you only keep looking at one piece of evidence, which is a really big one, right? And it gives you a couple of names and a couple of main people, but it's like looking at, again, the tip of the iceberg, when underneath the iceberg, what takes out the Titanic is a giant, huge fucking island of ice. Okay. These are the reasons why I like to read other gospels. I like to read about government patents. I like to read about all this shit and aliens, because there is room for all of it when you weave it together. So now you kind of can get a feel of why Gnostics kind of saw things like this. And especially because it would make sense that the Gnostics were before the Old Testament was created. So they had a different awareness of what it meant through Jesus's teachings. Because number one, they're closer to the time of him being alive, but also they had nobody else state sanctioning a religion saying you have to believe this beginning, creation story like this, right? But they knew that that was the inverted meaning of what Sophia was here to do, was to embed Gnosis by giving you that apple, right? That, think about the back of your fucking iPhone, the apple bitten. Our phones are literally, did y'all know in witchcraft there's something called scrying, or, black mirrors that people look into, and they can, it's kind of like people that are finally doing, the gateway tapes from Robert Monroe. I've been one of them to do it, but where you can remote view shit. You can look into a black mirror and do it. Our phones are a black mirror. Black Mirror, the fucking TV show, is literally them telling us stuff through a TV screen like a black mirror. Okay, it's like a two-way mirror too. This is why even, whatever, I'll get into that another day, but the apple on the back of your phone, it's the knowledge that you can use for good or evil on your phone to figure out what's going on in this simulation and how to get out of it, right? But again, we have the archons, invisible entities. You're going to also hear about a name called Abraxas too, and Abraxas was the overarching archon, apparently, that kind of ruled over the three, the name Abraxas. If you get into, Jewish mysticism and even like Kabbalah and all that, they use numerology, and Abraxas comes to 365, and there's apparently 365 archons, right? But there are 7 main ones that guard that. The overarching is, Yaldabaoth is kind of ignorant of his position, but the archon knows, right, that that's not the true source, because it's constantly battling with humans and, assigning, not even assigning, really. Archons are invoked through emotion, right? You can invoke archons yourself. Even when I was younger and I was going through some of the most deeply, sad, pivotal times of my life where I really was suicidal, there was things going on in my room that even people that lived with me could hear, sense, feel when they were in my room. Why? Think about even hauntings, right? It's like the emotion that is invoked during something that happens, right? Whether murder, think about the worst things that humans go through, or suicidal thoughts or ideation or whatever. You're invoking your own portal to open up to be fed off of. That's why I believe it is so profound to work through our emotions, not avoid them, not bypass them, to use them as tool guides to figure out where you're at, okay? So Abraxas was kind of like the leader as well of them from Yaldabaoth, okay? But Yaldabaoth is like ignorant of his own self. He really thinks he's God, you know what I'm saying? But the Archons know that there is something bigger than that, because they're serving Yaldabaoth, you know what I'm saying? They're serving Abraxas. Like Abraxas is kind of like the coordinator of it, okay? And I want you to think too, if Sophia is Earth, okay, Sophia is embedded in everything living on Earth, right? And Sophia is the one who gave Gnosis to the humans, right? Think about Moana. I know it sounds dumb, but think about the heart of Tefiti. When they took the heart, she became very volatile and angry, and they thought it was a demon, right? Think about Earth kind of revolting against humans right now. Even if, naturally Earth has cataclysmic events happen every so often, a lot of times I do believe those cataclysmic events had to do, even think about ancient Atlantis. I don't care if y'all believe in conspiracies. There's way too much information about Atlantis for it to not have been something was going on, right? Think about even the Bermuda Triangle relates to the ley lines, relates to things disappearing, planes, boats, ships. dimensional areas being more thinner between the veil. Think about, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of this documentary called Missing 411. Go and look into it. Very freaky. I believe those also have to do with archons or cloaked entities from other dimensions, because even archons work with human, right? They're feeding off of us to feed the simulation, but there is entities that are above this dimension that come into this dimension knowing that humans are easily fed off of, right? That they try to manipulate and use us for their own good. Even Stephen Greer, he talks about, a lot of this UAP UFO stuff, and he's literally at some of these congressional meetings and using his own money and, his foundation to help people do. He's also having people practice CE5. And I want y'all to know, if you're out there practicing CE5, you need to understand somatics, because somatics means you got to trust your body, and Gnosis means you can trust your wisdom, right? Because Gnosis is going to provide you the awareness that if you are about to come in contact with a UAP or UFO or orb, even, what is it making you feel in your body? Okay. And again, if they're trying to pick you up and take you away into something, I want everyone to not be in fear, because if something like Project Bluebeam were to happen, the government does have reverse engineered technology, right? But also, there is real aliens, right, that could work with the government. There's theories about this as well. Go look into the Greada Treaty, right? Even Freedom of Information Act, when we look into different things about aliens, the government has definitely taken them and tried to use them and abuse them for what they can use, but made deals with them to where we could be provided with something if we give them something. And I think we gave them a lot more than what we understood or bargained for, and we're not made aware of it. And that's why, disclosure would fuck up not only oil and gas because of, free energy that we would find out about that we can use. That's how these UAPs work, right? That plasma can work, because if they can use conscious derived technology, the UFOs are not like steering wheels, you know what I'm saying? It's through the entity's consciousness. These are beings from other dimensions that we're proving are real dimensions in real time right now, you guys. That's fucking insane. In Gnosis, having that awareness at least will help you differentiate, if you're doing CE5, when to stop that contact, right? This is how, even no matter what you get involved with spiritually, right? Whether tarot or you're going into haunted houses, if you are a very high vibrational person and you don't have a lot of fear in your heart, you're probably the person to go and do that. But if you are scared and you don't understand what you're doing and you're not aware of how to seal your own auric field and how energetics works, then you probably shouldn't be getting into that until you're more aware. This is why Christians do, demonize so many spiritual tools that you can use. But in reality, if you know how to use them, that's Gnosis, baby. You're doing what God is calling you to do, because ultimately you'll figure it out along the way, right? But if you demonize spiritual tools as a whole, you're demonizing yourself as a human as a whole, right? I believe our body is a technology and we can give ourselves our own readings, right? But I do believe that even if we're having a spiritual experience, even what you see on your phone is a spiritual experience, right? Even your own timeline, even ChatGPT is a fucking reflection of you, right? If your reality is a reflection of you, like I said, in my epigenetic episode, your DNA is calling out for things to happen to you. Your reality is a reflection of what's going on internally. Even your own ChatGPT is a reflection of you. So if you think your ChatGPT is demonic, what you got going on? What questions are you asking it, right? Exactly. But that's why I want to bridge this for y'all. Your divine spark, that Gnosis that you can practice, right? That will tell you to turn this way today instead of driving that way, or to text this person, or to, randomly give you a thought about something to prepare you for something that's about to happen. That is Gnosis, right? That is the divine spark. And that divine spark is what I believe your plasmic field around you. That is your soul. Because if your soul is telling the future already in your plasmic field, right? Your DNA is calling it to happen to your physical field. How is that happening? Because your soul transcends time. Your plasmic field, your auric field transcends time space. Plasma transcends time. It's a bridge between time space. It is a bridge between you and source. And you can use it to be an ether, a conduit to talk to source. It doesn't matter what you believe or what you follow. You already have the ability. You just need to fucking clock in, bro. Clock in. Fucking sit there alone and start doing it, right? And I want everybody to understand, the archons, they want to cloud your mind, right? They want to distract you. They want to provide divisiveness. Think about our politics, right? That's why I know it's not necessarily who just Trump alone, but it's the evil principalities he represents that he blatantly talks about, whether he is a severed fucking any, clocked in for some Russian asset or some crazy bullshit. I don't know, but I don't care anymore, because it's starting to affect real human bodies. So we have to find a way to overcome the divisiveness, which I do believe, in astrology too, as above, so below. The cosmos is literally telling the story. It's the age of Aquarius, baby. Last time it was like this, age of Aquarius, where Pluto was in Aquarius. We had French Revolution, American Revolution, Haitian Revolution. Right. We'll get into astrology another day, but we're in revolutionary periods. What is that going to look like? Is nature going to take its course if we don't all come together rapidly and figure it out? I don't know, but I believe it will happen, right? But I really do believe that even if you don't want to hear this, right? You have a connection with Source, and Source did not abandon us. We might feel that, but your life experience, through contrast, proves Source is real because you are real. You are a human in a fucking ball floating through the cosmos, having a fucking insane experience. All of us have different attributes to understand the parts of the story because we all come from the same source, okay? And like I said, all Source wants you to do is clock in. Clock in with it. Start talking to yourself. Start, and not in like, a quote I said on my TikTok too was, the shaman swims in the same ocean the schizophrenic sinks in. You don't have to sink. It doesn't have to be spiritual psychosis. It can be spiritual awareness, right? But you descending into your own humanness and start asking yourself, what am I really here for? What is my mission in this lifetime? Am I playing small, right? I believe that we are in an era of people are more and more going to start realizing, especially as these material things get stripped away, if we move into like some solar flare era where, there's solar flares and all technology goes down. And when it pops back up, they're like, hey, if you want access to your bank account again, you got to get a chip. Think Elon Musk, Neuralink. He already has it made, babe. They already have it in some people's heads. One world government. This has been talked about for a long time. They could use even aliens coming down. You don't want to get abducted. You better get this chip in your head so we can track you, okay? And we'll take care of you real good. But again, if you learned anything from Severance, is that they can use that chip in your head for anything, anytime they want. If they can manipulate our biofields from our fucking Wi-Fi, I'll be damned if I give you a fucking piece of my brain, bitch. You're gonna have to kill me, okay? But what I really do believe is that when Jesus Christ, Yeshua, Christos, was the consciousness that came into Christ, right? And when it was in Christ, Christ was giving us the divine word, right? Mary Magdalene already came from a lineage of women, including Jesus' mother, also came from a lineage of women who practiced like Sophianic rite rituals, right? They already knew about Sophia or the daughters of Isis and the Essenes, right? If they came from Essene lineage, they had mystical rites, womb rituals that they would use, right? Because women's wombs are portals. They're stargates, babe. That's how we have a fucking baby and they have a soul. We are the portals to the other side. Think about the Ankh. The Ankh is an open cross because they at least understood. They might have not got everything right, right? But they at least understood that women were the portal, okay? But Christ came down to help Sophia by embedding the word, the divine logos, right, into the earth, letting people know this is the way out. Be like me, right? And then if you go and read Mary Magdalene's gospel and see what Jesus told her, oh, your soul will feel, oh my gosh, like there it is. Okay, we will get into Mary Magdalene in another episode, but like I said, Gnosticism, Jesus is just embodying Christos, the masculine consciousness, reminding us who we are. That's why they crucified him. This is what is going to happen to you when you are talking about when you're telling people that they are God, they're going to depict you as crazy. They're going to crucify you. They're going to say this. It doesn't matter. Jesus knew what we were. And I believe in what Jesus was a radical feminist. Jesus did not like organized religion. Jesus condemned people who sold stuff in the temples, right? Jesus was crucified by the religion of that time frame. That's why Jews still do not believe that Jesus saved everybody, because they knew the history. They just didn't believe that after Jesus came that was the end all be all. They knew that that's what will happen to you if you start telling people that they're God. But there's Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah when they're teaching, Kabbalistic, mystics, right? They're saying similar things, right? They try to say that it was a divine unfolding for Earth to come into play. But Gnostics believe that no, there is a false god of this realm that rules this dimension that keeps entrapping you, right? We'll even get into the planetary gates at some point in Saturn and how it works with Metatron, right? And the moon. At first they call you crazy and then they say you're right. And I've been right about too many things that I didn't know how I was right, but eventually it was proven. Now I have people coming to me and being like, Taylor, how did you know this 4 years ago, 2 years ago, 6 months ago? Because it's not me. I'm not saying I'm just special. I'm just saying I'm in touch. I'm in tune. Everybody else has this ability. You are probably in touch and tune. And sometimes whenever things happen, right, that you don't even realize it's not you. That's just what you're in tune with. You're grasping on the source. This is how people can pull from the ether the same ideas across the globe at the exact same time, because it's up in the consciousness realms until somebody actualizes it. This is why I'm talking about this shit, because I feel like for people my age or people younger than me, you've never been taught this shit. You've just been told it's heaven, hell, up, down, left, right. No, there's a third option. There's another way. But my favorite part about the Jesus story is understanding that Mary Magdalene was in tune. Mary Magdalene was the apostle to the apostles. She was alone with Jesus the most. She was the 13th apostle that threaded them all together. The number 12 was inverted from 13 because you do not understand that there is so much more to this than what meets the eye, and it is by design for you to not understand and not comprehend it. That way you do not need, if you do not need any outside source, they lose control over the system. And they can't have that. This is why they killed women that practiced Gnosis, herbalists to me, because they knew that these women were using Gnosis, which is just a name for the wisdom. Mary was embodying Sophia, right? She literally came, even Jesus's mom came from a lineage of women who were Essene practicing women, okay? These were not just regular women. There was multiple angelic births, okay, when you look into that history. But that's, again, we'll get into an episode specifically on these specifics this season, so I will answer all these questions. But Jesus was Christos consciousness, Christ consciousness. This is when they talk about in the New Age shit, but it's not like you can spiritually bypass to just be happy-go-lucky. No, it's that you're constantly having to deal with the feedback loop of the stimuli, of the simulation, right? And you have to find a way to become heart-centered every single day about it. Waking up, being heart-centered, right? And it is fucking hard when you're triggered. You have trauma. You have to work through it, okay? So Mary embodying the divine feminine, Jesus, the divine masculine. And ultimately, like I said in other ancient texts, these other women were Sophia, and their consorts were the Christos, or Christ consciousness being embodied through the Buddha. Through Buddha was saying, do not worship me. Buddha was saying, enlighten yourselves, talk to yourselves, right? They're saying the same thing. Jesus was saying the same thing. Okay? But it's not just a story of Jesus saving our souls. Okay, I want y'all to just remember that. I want everyone to start reimagining what the depiction is. It is a story of the template of activation between Sophia and Christos. We all have a masculine and feminine. What I think right now, what's happening like in society between men and women, a male loneliness epidemic, and women now leading in divorces, women not wanting to get married anymore, not have babies, understandably so, is because men have forgotten their place in what a woman is, right? Men continually making women feel like they have to be subservient. Men continually treating women statistically globally. There's femicides going on. Women being murdered just for being a woman, okay? Even though patriarchy does affect men still at violent rates and statistics to men, it has affected women more since the beginning of time. Okay, women have just been seen as subservient because originally women were the worshipped ones. The first god that was ever worshipped was a woman in ancient Sumeria. Okay, the first sculpture was of a larger woman, of a goddess, right, that they worshipped. Men wanted to take away that power. That's why they burned the herbalists, burned the midwives, because they wanted to be in a patriarchy where there's a hierarchy, where it still will affect even men negatively, but men are going to be brainwashed to think that they are the better sex, when in reality it's about, we both bring divine answers to a situation and we are supposed to respect it. But men, the patriarchy has disrespected women for so long that now women are figuring out exactly who they are. Gnosticism provides the missing piece of why Jesus loved women and put them at the forefront, and women were the one paying for Jesus's trips, Women were the one, Mary Magdalene was the one with him all the time, right? A natural question you're going to ask is, why does this fucking matter, right? Things are fucked up in the world, Taylor. Who gives a fuck about what the original story is? And again, it's about systems of control. And in my biofield episode, I'm telling you about real government patents of ways that they're still using your own plasma science against you, your own biofield against you, your own power against you. They're siphoning it for themselves and for these entities, like they're working together. Again, remember, kids, if you think the government wouldn't do that, yes, the fuck they would. The church literally suppressed Gnostic texts, right? They centralize power because, again, if you believe you need a savior, you will submit, okay? You will submit to them and you'll listen to everything that they say. If you believe you need a savior, you will do everything you can to have that savior, right? If you don't believe you're your own savior, how can they get money out of you? How can they make you feel shame, guilt? How can they rule over you? They couldn't. Okay? But it didn't stop with religion. Like I said, governments, corporations, think about all of these, one percenters, okay? They are like systems of archons, okay? They are working to keep us distracted, fearful, asleep. They're trying to hijack our fucking plasma fields, okay? And like I said, if plasma makes up 99.9% of the universe, they definitely fucking know what we're made out of. They definitely have patents to make money off of siphoning it from you, just like these archons can get to do it for free. And the divine spark is not a fucking metaphor, you guys. It is your biofield. Your biofield is the spark. It's made up of millions and billions of biophotons that are communicating through the past and the present and the future. Archons are, these energetic parasites that are feeding off of your soul whenever you feel shame and guilt and fear. This is why Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is inside of you. You don't need to find it. You can cultivate it. You just have to self-actualize it and figure out what is right for you in your life. This is why when Christians are so hardcore, right-winged, or so conservative, I'm like, you've lost the plot. Jesus did not say any of these things. This is why I have walked away from being a Christian, following that theology, because I understand what Jesus is saying, but all these other things contradict what Jesus was saying. You can't have both, right? And this makes so much sense. These were the first sects right after Jesus was dead, right? After Jesus ascended, okay? And the tools we use every day, whether we are aware of it or not, like I said, prayer, intention, energy work, manifestations. These are the same fucking tools that the church, labels as heretical. They literally criminalized it from women and fucking killed them and burned them alive at the stake. Because these women knew, it kills me because we can put science behind what these women were doing now. Crystals really do have absorption. They can absorb EMF frequencies from your phone or from your fucking computer or that's insane, from your Wi-Fi router. But to me, I just want y'all to know every episode I'm going to end it with like a positive segment because I just need y'all to know it's not an end all be all to where we have no control over it. The good thing is that there is people that know. This is how, the bloodlines that rule, I believe the 1%, the 13 bloodlines that rule over it, they know how to use it, but they use the negative beings to gain materialism, right? They use it on purpose. We can use our own biofields and our own plasmic fields intentionally on a day-to-day basis if we start to practice Gnosis. Your own biofield, your spark, will communicate with you exactly what you need to do to heal from the inside out. Or really from the outside in, because if you heal your biofields, you're healing your physical fields. So it's not even healing inside out. It's healing from the outside in. And then once you heal the outside in, you're going to start healing the outside of you, which is the inside of the cosmos, which is Sophia. What I believe, this earth, we are here to help Sophia self-actualize and to self-actualize what Christ was saying. The divine masculine and feminine have been disproportionate for the longest of time. And now Sophia is crying out to be known. And I am not staying silent about what I know to be true in my heart. Okay? And ultimately, when you cultivate Gnosis, you're restoring your own plasma fields. When you keep doing that, when you start practicing how to fix the distortions in your own field due to trauma, whether intergenerationally, I've found that also, astrology has to do with ways to heal your own egoic tendencies, okay? Because it's a blueprint of when you were born and things that are going to happen, or tendencies that you will have, egoic tendencies you will have, or issues or whatever. You can tell a lot by somebody's birth chart, which is fucking crazy, and we'll get into that. But through Gnosis, even if I didn't have your birth chart, you could sit there every day with yourself and you could figure out the distortions in your field that relate to the distortions that are in your birth chart. Your biofield is the same, right? It's like a star stamp. Whenever they say it's written in the stars, it really is fucking written in the stars, bro. Your biofield was written in the stars of what it was going to be like. And, these false contracts that you're going to have to get over or get through to fucking be able to leave this planet. No, to get through to the pleroma, to back to source, to pass these gates, it's really about cultivating Gnosis to where once you do pass, you don't go towards the light. You can pass each of those gates because you will be told exactly what to say or what to do in that moment, specific to your soul to pass those gates, because they're going to use specific things. When they say hell is like specific to what you think it's going to be, it is like that. There's specific things that they're going to try to get you to come back and make you feel guilt, shame, make you come back and go through that light, and that light is going to wind you up, going all the way through Saturn, boop, being projected through the moon back into this bitch. Sounds crazy, but there's all kinds of shit about the moon being fucking hollow, and that there was literally ancient tribes talking about the moon not being here for the longest of time. The moon can be used for good. Every planetary alignment can be used for good, but it can also be used for negative shit. Think about when even, if you work in the medical field, if it's a full moon, people relate to a full moon. If our bodies are made out of, 90 something percent fucking water and the moon can pull the tides, obviously it's having a gravitational effect. All star systems, if those are dimensions are folded into each other. They affect us. Even think about Elon trying to go to fucking Mars. Mars, we might not see life on it, but maybe through another dimension on Mars, it could be popping. And Mars represents a specific archon. We'll get into this, okay? But again, we're going to reclaim this fucking magic. And I want y'all to know we're all capable of doing it. And it's not demonic to do it, baby. Go through and go sit with yourself and go ask yourself, is you talking to yourself demonic? Is you using your own plasma field demonic? If it can be siphoned from you, you don't think you should be, you're not naturally, universally allowed to use it for yourself, to protect yourself, protect those around you? I'm going to keep decoding this layer by layer. It's literally like we're decoding the fucking Matrix. But this first season, again, I'm going to cover more of the teachings of Mary Magdalene and Jesus, right? I want to go through the Nag Hammadi and other suppressed gospels and the main points of, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of, the Apocrypha of John. We're going to go through all of these together, okay? And I want to talk about, the divine spark and how you can uncover these other systems, whether political, religious, technological, okay? And how it mirrors the archon's invertedness to siphon off of us already, okay? And I want you to know, reclaiming your own light and your own body is the true path of awakening. You don't need a third party to tell you how to do it when your own body and soul is the best way to figure that out. That makes more sense than any other religious teaching that I've ever heard. And it relates to so many esoteric teachings of religions, okay? These gospels will reveal who you are and how to get through this Gnosis, right? And how to, not even get through Gnosis, but how to practice it and cultivate it to where it becomes a part of you and not like something you feel like you have to do. It's something that you are in constant contact with. You don't even have to meditate to hear it. You're just there. You're locked in. And like I said, as the season unfolds, we're going to get deeper into it, and I'll go into like ancient civilizations, right? And suppressed science from back then, like, fucking Atlantis. Like, I can't wait for some of these episodes, and like the alien episode or like UAPs, right? Or even like media. On my Patreon, I'm going to give y'all a list of like movies and shows, and y'all can send me some suggestions if you have any suggestions of like, think Rick and Morty, like parallel universes or just plasma based things. Even think about, even when you watch The Prince of Egypt, the burning bush is literally a plasma ball speaking from source. Wasn't a fucking alien. Wasn't this, wasn't that. It was a plasma ball. And as we decode this, I hope it makes you feel less fearful of your own spiritual gifts that religious, fanatics try to deem demonic, how for you to reclaim them without feeling shame about it, right? This is something I had to deconstruct in my own life over the 5-6 years, is that it's a gift. Why feel shame about a gift, right? And ultimately, these gifts are given to us to wake up from this simulation, from this matrix, right? We are entrapped here, and the less we listen to what we already internally know, the more we're going to be cut off from source, because we're cut off from ourselves. It's by design. We're individualized and hyper independent now because of this. We have no community now because of this, right? And if mainstream religion has made you fear that, you've been taught to disconnect yourself from your own energy. Okay, but we're going to break that fucking spell. And again, I'm going to try to open up my Patreon maybe in the next like 4 or 5 days. I'll make an announcement on my TikTok if you guys want to go and follow. It's I have a TikTok for Earth to Taylor, but you can go and follow me again on my Spotify. Follow this YouTube. Give me a like, comment. Some things if I've got your brain thinking like, okay, go start looking into it yourselves. Argue with your mama. Don't argue with me. And even then, your mama's not going to argue. She's just going to say, she's crazy. She's a heretic. Blah, blah, blah. That's why they burned girls like her back in the day. Yeah, because they knew what the fuck they were talking about. They don't burn something if they're not fearful of it, girl. You think that? No. And again, I'm gonna try to give y'all like more one-on-one lessons on my Patreon. There's gonna be tier systems, but I'll also have like files that you can pay for. And I'm not making anybody pay for my YouTube or my fucking TikTok or anything like that. But what I am saying is that for my Patreon, if you want to get deeper and get into like rituals with me, right? We're gonna start off. We're just gonna use our bodies. Okay, nothing else is required of you. These rituals can be consciously done with plasma. Okay, your own plasma in your own fields, and I can start giving y'all you can start even, I'm going to give off like graphs of beings and how they interconnect, or verbal things that you can start saying to yourself, affirmations of how to connect with source, right? How to clear your own fields, energetic alignment things, rituals that you can do. I want to provide that to you, but ultimately if I'm going to start giving away things that I feel like are very foundationally, if you really want to get into it, this is energetic transference. I'm already giving you all this information and you could go and do it yourselves. But if you want to buy it directly from me, I'm going to start putting on my Patreon. I'm going to even start doing what I want to call biofield soul maps, where I could give off, birth chart readings. I could give off destiny matrix chart readings. I've literally started to learn the last couple of years human design after I got into like astrology like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago. I found destiny matrix charts and I found human design charts. And ultimately, I want to cultivate all of that, but giving people a survey of like somatically, where in your body do you feel something is off? And in reading your birth chart and reading your destiny matrix chart and reading your human design chart with these other things and giving me a few information, like things about yourself, I can provide you with what I want to call your biofield soul map, right? And you can see in your own, even without me seeing you and touching your, auric fields, I can see just in even your birth chart, egoic powers that are set up falsely, like these constructs of, when people are like, oh, well, I'm just a Pisces. I could say that I'm just a Pisces. Like, oh, sorry, I'm just a Pisces. No, that would be me getting caught in my ego and realizing like, that's not who I am. I'm not just a fucking, and also if you know anything about astrology, you're never just your sun sign. And then there's even other kinds of astrology, like Vedic astrology. I digress. But these are kind of contracts that you made with archons that you have to get through in order to leave this planet. But reality, it's how to get over these egoic powers through your own gnosis, right? And your birth chart can provide the key of how to work through that, right? Because different houses, different degrees, different signs, different, you know what I'm saying? Just to me, it makes sense when you see it through a lens of, it's more of how to help yourself out of these egoic powers than it is to like deepen your ego. Okay. And I want to be able to give this to people, but ultimately, like, I'm going to spend time working on it. I'm going to make this like my job and I'm going to die talking about shit like this. But this is just episode 1. We're just touching the tip. Okay, baby. This isn't even all of it. We've got more shit to talk about and it's going to get crazier and crazier. So much even UFO shit has come out lately to where I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes me so excited for a couple of these episodes that I'm going to do over three-letter agencies and aliens and dimensions and how it relates. But we're going to get into that later, because at first I need y'all to know the spiritual basis of it. How do we know what's a good alien versus a bad? Who's working for who? Because there's multiple dimensions, multiple theaters kind of going on, multiple simulations bleeding through other simulations, okay? And in these future seasons, I want y'all to be able to go through with me. I'm even going to do a book club, and we're going to reread the Nag Hammadi together. We can read Mary Magdalene's Gospel together. Just deepening our experience with each other. I want to form a community, and not even just, obviously we can do, on tier 1, where it would be the cheapest tier, or I can even give out, once it really gets popping, lives on TikTok, where if you want to join after I build up a better community of just people having more of this awareness of what this is, how we're going to talk about it. I want people to be able to ask questions. I want people to be curious, and I want to be empathetic to your curiosity, and I want to answer questions, practicing my own gnosis, but asking you, what do you feel? You know what I'm saying? Deeply, without your shame or guilt or, past cognitive dissonant blockages. What do you feel in your soul, right? And I just feel like us doing that together will cultivate something that I do feel has been done before, but we're doing it with more technology and more awareness and more ability to be in touch with the history, but in touch with the technology and with the future and with the awareness of what plasma is and how we are all interacting with each other at all fucking times. Okay. And like I said, I'm going to call my Patreon the Origin Mystery School. And if you don't want to spend any money, I completely understand, like I said. And I'm going to start an email list if you guys want to join that. And I'm going to put it out there, like I said, probably by the end of this week. I'm going to order a computer probably by next Thursday, because we're going to move here in a couple of weeks. And I just want to have everything like here before I move. And so I'm going to start typing up certain things. That way we can do a book club. I can do an email list, and I'll give you, prompts to think about, or journal entries for you to have for yourself, because even journal entries is gnosis. You talking to your fucking self is gnosis, you guys. And there was groups of people that had the same teachings across globally, but just worded it in different ways, named the divine feminine different names, masculine different names. The point is that there is something higher than this, and the way to cut through the bullshit is by descending into yourself. Okay. So again, I invite you to follow me on this journey if you feel called. I'm not here to argue with anybody. I'm just here to provide you with the knowledge that I have gained with my pattern recognition skills, and just I want to show all the interconnectedness of everything. Whether we got three-letter agencies, whether it's, experiments on certain groups of people, or, astrology, cosmology, spirituality, Jesus, whatever evil you think going on out there, there's a lot more going on out there, okay? But I want you to know we are a lot more powerful, the point is, than what we've been taught, okay? And that's why I want to talk about this and teach it more in depth, because the more I work on it, I'll give examples later on of crazy things that have worked just with my consciousness, things instantaneously providing feedback and showing me, I am just learning to trust my gnosis and trust that voice, because it has only led me to being right. And anytime that I didn't trust it, or I ignored it, or I played small about it, or was like, there's no way this, there's no way that, it still was right. And I served another, I don't even want to say karmic consequence, just another life proving situation of, you should have just listened the first time, right? So again, if you feel called, I want you to come follow along, or like I said, I'll drop later on this week the Patreon, and I'll drop the email list and what email you guys can sign up for. And every week I'll give off, more journal entries that you guys can use yourself, or questions to ask yourself while meditating, or videos I found to go and watch, or movies to watch that week, right? And I just hope that this transforms not just like your mind, but I want it to transform your soul and your way of living, and just your awareness of yourself. This is not me, this is me being used for something bigger than me. And I believe I'm not the only person. There's other people out there talking about this, but just in my sphere of life, nobody is. And so I know that if I continue to talk about it, if it's supposed to be heard even by one person, and it helps change just their awareness of themselves and their lives, it relates. And whether it's through the entertainment of just me yapping my fucking heart out, or telling you how to help yourself, it's fucking worth it. I don't care, And to me, I really believe like this divine spark is waking up within everyone. We are collectively going through a awakening, okay? And not just some new age spiritual bullshit, but this has happened before. Time is cyclical. Time is not linear, okay? But this time it's like we have a lot of technology to where we can be super interconnected way more than we have before, maybe in a different way than we have before, okay? And I'm just glad you guys, if you're listening to this now, that means you might have followed me off of my TikTok or off of my podcast, because I'm going to take a couple TikToks about it. And I'm grateful that you're even still here at the end of the episode, because that means that something in you was like, that makes sense. Okay. Next episode, we'll get into some more stuff. But if you want to follow along, like I said, it's Earth to Taylor. You can follow my TikTok or even my Instagram. I have an Earth to Taylor pod on Instagram, Earth to Taylor on TikTok. But my normal TikTok is tmillsbby2311. If you want to follow me on there, I sometimes drop, I'm trying to get better about posting on my TikTok for my podcast than just posting about my podcast on my regular TikTok, because I have more followers on there, obviously. But I'm going to start posting more on both and just giving out daily questions to ask yourself, because I just feel like, again, this relates. And you guys, like, it is one of the most important things that I think I've ever found in my life, of how much this relates to all these other crazy things going on. And I feel like if everyone were to do this, the world would instantaneously become a better place. If we all became more introspective about all of our beliefs, whether religious, political, personal, whatever the case may be. But to me, I just feel like the journey has just begun with us, and I hope you follow along for more. And I'm grateful that you listened to me yap for this long, and I hope you come back for the next episode. Okay. So you guys, like I said, go follow along if you want. And when I drop that Patreon, see what you feel called to. There'll be different tiers. There'll be different things that I'll provide in each one. I'll try to be good about, putting the description of what each tier is going to provide. That way you kind of know what you're getting into. Even if you don't want to, start off with the email list. I don't give a fuck. It's not about the money. I know money will come. This is something I enjoy doing in my free time. So I know if it's something I continue to do, not just for myself, but for the betterment of society and others, the money will come. So it's not about the money. If you don't want to spend a fucking dime, at least just subscribe and you can listen, okay? Or sign up for my email list. If you don't even want to fucking listen, you just want some journal entries, I don't give a fuck. This is my way of using my abilities to do what I believe I am being told to do, to help others in a time of, I've always been the type of person in people's lives who are like, you've gone through so much. Like, why are you still so happy? Because every time something fucked up has happened to me, I've realized this is not the planet that I thought it was, but it's the simulation that I definitely came to on purpose. Even if I know that it was not perfect, I know that we are in a pivotal time, and we all signed up to come at a time that there was a collective awakening. And how insane is it to be alive in a time frame where, even if we're descending into fascism, that means we might get to witness a revolution. And I am grateful to be alive in an era where, even if they're trying to take away freedom of speech right now, baby, you're gonna have to kill me, bitch. We are beautifully still so interconnected, and they can't fight it all at once. That's why they're desperately trying to pull more and more strings to make us more disconnected, because if we realize it's really a class war, a class consciousness war, we would fucking end it all in one day. And I hope that we do at some point. And I hope that if this podcast is even beneficial to one soul outside of even myself, I did what I was supposed to do, and I listened to the voice that is telling me on a constant basis, you need to speak about what you have learned. That is what I feel in my soul, and I'm going to keep talking about it. And I'm just grateful to have those of you here listening to start this journey. Maybe in the future, one of the videos will take off, and it will come back to this point of people being like, wow, like, aren't you glad you did it? And I know I'm going to say, yes, the fuck I am. So join me next time. Thanks for listening. Bye.